Amen. All right, so this is the time we call the Afterburn, where we can take up comments and questions about the teaching today. And so if you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to go ahead and raise your hand here locally. If you're online, Rob and Kurt are monitoring the online. This is also the time where the online people need to be extra aware of not trespassing. Okay? Don't behave in manners that would be trespassing on the respect and the rules of the room, okay? Respect the leadership there. After all, if you do that during this teaching, then you really weren't listening to what was said. Okay, because that would be trespassing. All right, so who wants to get us started? I mean, I saw a lot of people with their heads nodding. There was a lot of people really kind of resonating with this, so I'm glad that it's working and making sense. Maybe really finally dealing with an issue that's so important that really has never been dealt with this way. I certainly have never taught it this way, so I'm glad that the Father's inspiring all of the details this time more than the first time. First time was like one part, and it was more simplistic than this. Who wants to go first? Okay, Stephanie?
When you were talking about the Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, the thing that started coming to mind for me, and I'm kind of trying to verify if my connections might be okay, I went back to Deuteronomy 29:4, where he says, unless you had the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you wouldn't have it. And in that particular event that he said those words is when he's on the cross and he's being killed, and they didn't realize who he was and what they were doing to him. And then I'm relating that in kind of a personal way. It can be that the people who hurt, offend, whatever it is that is harmful to us, don't see what they're doing either. Mm-hmm. They don't have and even sometimes I think praying that the Father would give them the eyes to see, the ears to hear. So I had a whole thought process going on. So I was like, if you're praying for them to have that, then you have like one of those Shaul moments. But he was blinded in his moment rather than seeing, but it was still like an eye thing, if you know what I mean. But in that, he was brought to that point of recognizing his own blindness to things and what he did to other people in his own blindness, and how challenging that must have been for him. Anyway, it's kind of how far I got with my thought process when I was doing that. I need to study it through a little bit more. But
no, that's very good. No, I appreciate that. And as we start to process and you start to make connections and to see how that all plays out, the verse that kind of fits into what you're saying is the one where it talks about there will be those that think they're doing Elohim's work that are going to do things that are trespasses. They're going to set you up to be killed. They're going to turn you into the authorities. But they think they're doing, but they don't know what they're doing. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're doing what would be pleasing, but it's not. Okay? So that will be a lot of the people out there will also trespass who think that they're absolutely doing things that are right, as opposed to people that are just callously out there just doing stuff they know is wrong, but they don't care. I mean, they're going to have a wide spectrum of people in that category of forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Okay? All right, who's next? Okay, Richard.
Thank you, Rabbi. The world really needs this teaching. I really need this teaching. And I'm from the world. I'm trying to get out of there. When you started out, you said releasing all negative energy connected with the trespass. And what I thought about is the opposite of that. When that doesn't happen, how that turns inward, it turns into a resentment. And then you addressed it later on, and I really think it's important that resentment, the lack of forgiveness, kills the now. It will absolutely destroy whatever relationship we're trying to have with anyone if we're totally consumed with not releasing that energy. And unfortunately, and you keep saying this over and over again, we must do this if we want to be free. And we have a song here that I really like, Daenu. But when you have Emunah and Daenu at the same time, we have that peace that surpasses all understanding, and we're not totally full of negative energy killing the now.
Amen. Amen. Very well said, Richard. Look, it's very popular in the sort of new agey, I don't know, whatever the labels you put on it, to talk about being present, okay? But this is a very important concept that, if we can separate where other groups like to talk about it, is that if the past has not been resolved inside of you, I don't mean resolved with the other person, but the releasing of that negative stuff is you resolving to release that, then it's in your now. And also, if all you think about and worry about is the future, that's also leaks backwards into your now. And then the now has no fun, no joy, no peace, it's just awful. When really there only is now. Okay, the past already happened and the future hasn't happened yet, and who knows what it really will come out to be. I mean, really it's just now. And we're very not present in our now, and we miss genuine moments with our families, with our friends, with whatever we're not getting, because we're not in the now like we need to be. And I don't want to sound all like in that whole, sort of more secular way of, but they're right. They're right. They're not right if they disconnect it from any kind of vertical thing, but they're right about how this is a mindset and approach that we have that's really hurting us, is that we have a really hard time being present. And by the way, that's one of the things that all of the personal developers have been talking about for the last 10 or 15 years more than almost anything else, is the ability to be present, And actually, a lot of our conversations with somebody, instead of being like this, we're like talking this way to somebody, but we're not present. We don't look people in the eye. We don't focus on them. We're thinking about other things. We're looking at stuff behind them. It's very hard to actually be present. It's because we have too many things distracting us. It could be whatever happened right before I ran into you, and then you and I start a conversation, but my mind is still occupied by what had happened 5 minutes ago, especially if it was highly charged. Okay, in a negative way, I might be distracted by it. And I'm not able to give you that attention. Or I'm already on my way to go do something, and that's all I'm thinking about, but I need to stop, though, because maybe you need something right now, and I have to be able to put that completely on hold to give you that attention. Well, think about it when we're talking about the idea of being absent the body and present with the Creator. Okay, that phrase is used in very esoteric ways, but really it's much more literal in saying, look, when I'm thinking about me and my stuff and where I am and everything that I'm in my body, I'm in my flesh, then it's very hard to be focused on Him because I'm preoccupied with this. But if I can be absent this, meaning stop focusing on all of this, the stuff that's about me, then maybe I could actually be present with Him. And so that's why a lot of times when we pray, the best stuff is the stuff when you're done talking. Because you got to get all that fleshly body stuff out of the way first. The me. I'm hurt, I'm upset, I need, I want, I don't like, this is going on, I need your help, whatever it is. Then you can finally go, okay, now I can be present with Him. Because until then, you're all into you. And you wanted Him to be into you. Hard to be into Him. Okay? And so that's a really important thing as we go in the process. And so we struggle in our present because we're really not very present. We're just not. We're way too overly occupied with either the past or the future. Okay? If you're just worried about your bills, you worry about how something that's coming up soon is worrying you, and that's all you're occupying. It's like the person that when they're home, all they think about is their job, and when they're at their job, all they think about is what's going on at home. It's like, be present in one of them. Both of them, preferably. And you'll do better at both of them. But be completely present. And that's, if you do that at your job, your boss will notice you above others, because most people are not fully present when they work. And it's clear to the boss that they can see that the person's preoccupied. But they also can notice the person who's fully focused and there on what they're doing. And that's really important. But you can't do that if all this other noise is in your head. And this whole process we're talking about today helps to deal with that. Because let's say you had a moment in the morning with your spouse before you went to work. That is, if you can't do this, that is going to wreck your whole day. And most of the time, that's what you do. You let it wreck your whole day. Or you can let it go. You can release it and have a good day. Oh, whatever is going on between you and your spouse will still be there when you get back, and you still need to work towards resolution, reconciliation, and stuff. But you can forgive it. You can pull into the parking lot at work and pause, take a deep breath, and pray and say, Father, help me release all this. Help me to really forgive so I can have a good day and be productive because I have to forgive. Or you're going to walk in and then you're going to share your moaning and groaning or whatever groaning to one of your coworkers and this and that. You're going to basically embarrass your spouse and say Lashon Hara and spread all the evil things. This is not going to help. Okay? That noise should never come into the job should never come into the house should never come into the job. And none of that should come into this building when you come here on Shabbat. You should have released all that noise so you can be present with him and present with each other. You can't do that otherwise. It's not going to work, okay? It's just not going to work. All right, so who's next? All right, Kathy, go ahead.
Throw me under the bus, Mr. Steve. Yeah. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Thank you,
shalom.
Rabbi, for the
You're welcome.
teaching. Thank you, Abba, for your word to us. I also wanted to just reiterate Mr. Richard and his lovely wife, my sister Anna. They really helped me with some of that not being stuck, or helped me to work through, even though at the time I didn't want the spotlight on me. But my sister knew what was better, and her husband was great counsel for me.
Awesome. Fantastic.
I also just wanted to say that the death of your future is what's at stake here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't get that back. And it grieves my heart, yet Abba has brought me to this point, and now going forward, I don't have to live that way anymore. But when you've burned through decades, it's a grievous thing. It's a really grievous thing.
Amen.
So praise Abba. Thank you, Rabbi, for the teaching.
You're welcome.
That's that freedom. That's that joy, because there's more hope and light than ever has been. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. Look, you can't go back and undo all the stuff that we did dumb in the past and all the time we wasted. But you can redeem the time by not wasting any more of it. I mean, as long as you're above the ground, you want to, what? You want to look 5 years from now and look back and see more time you wasted? Or you want to enjoy the time, make full use of the time, do the things he wants us to do in that time? And that's really more the key. And I don't want to say that I'm not against the phrase you use as far as you're putting your future to death or whatever, but what you're doing is you're determining your future. Okay? You need to understand that what you're doing right now is determining your future. And so are you going to pause long enough to watch and follow through, okay, to recognize that the path you're on leads somewhere, and the actions and decisions that you're making lead somewhere, okay? And so that's really important that you understand that. Amen? Amen. Okay, who's next? Okay, Steve, go ahead and put the mic right up by your mouth.
All right, somebody said something with me earlier, and it kind of was funny, but I think if you take it and reword it, it could be useful, because the challenge here is when the person or the face that's in the mirror is the challenge, and that might mean that you're horrible looking, but you're struggling with the ability to let go of your past hurts or disappointments, and it's all about you. So it's kind of like if you're a glass of water and you're full to the brim, how much air is in that glass? None. Well, that air is Abba. So if you have no room in your life for him, how can he help you get through what you need to get through?
Yeah, you got to empty some stuff out. Amen. Okay, good. Okay, Jana.
Okay, so thank you for this teaching, and this series has been very convicting, but encouraging at the same time. So I kind of have it's going to go along with what you and I have talked about. Not going into too much detail, but with everything that's going on with my daughter, I've had to face a lot of things in the mirror, the mistakes I've made. I'm trying not to cry. And the fact of not for lack of a better term, re-crucifying myself and continuously beating myself up. But we're here to a point, right? And the way that she's acting right now is because of in the past. I'm trying to make those changes now so I don't have that in the future, right?
Correct, exactly.
How do I forgive her for the anger and everything and not hold that? Do you know what I mean? Like, not hold it to her.
We may need to talk more. Sometimes when you can't process your anger and your negative emotions, you need to counsel. That's part of how this works. But you have to just release the negative emotions. You have to understand that this is where she's at because the path that she's been on and the places that she's been and the things that have happened in her life have brought her to this place. And some of that is your fault, and some of it isn't. But you have to be able to release the response you're having to her anger thrown at you. You can't respond back with the anger, okay? You have to say, yep, I probably deserve some of that, and I'm not going to own it as something that's going to cause me now to be angry with her. I'm not going to let it make me angry with me. I'm going to let it be a motivator to make the necessary adjustments, okay?
Yeah, that's what you had counseled, was to not allow it to do that. And so when we were talking on the phone the other night, I just let her spew, kind of. And instead of responding back and being angry and holding on to it, I said, you're right, and I'm sorry, please forgive me, and I'm trying to be better. So I guess I'm just trying to, now it's a matter of letting the actions follow up with the words and not just keep going in the vicious circle, if that makes sense. Like to actually
the missing element that we didn't get to talk about, I guess one of the missing elements is that when it comes to resolving and reconciling, is that often this is going to need time to demonstrate that changes actually have happened, okay? You can repent all you want, and the person says, okay, I'm going to watch now and see if there's actually a difference. Right. So, but you have to then be diligent to be different because you're being watched. So if you want to reconcile and restore with your daughter, and she heard you say that I'm sorry for the things that I did and I'm trying to do better, she's now going to need to watch. And if she watches and sees it actually is real, because remember, she only knows you the other way. Okay, so now she has to have a period of time to know you a different way.
Right.
And then over time, there will be this understanding. Look, a lot of you have this even with your family members. You came into Torah observance. You stopped doing certain things you did when you were in mainstream Christianity. And when you stopped doing the things that you stopped doing, you had a lot of family members thinking, yeah, it's just a fad. I'm going to see what happens. But then after a while, they saw, wow, they're serious. And then you might have gotten a backlash after that. But then even longer, if you've been doing this long enough, they'll change again when they realize you're still serious after all these years, and start to respect that this is your path. They might not like it, but they may start to respect it. So you've had some of that, right? Okay, so they'll look at you maybe with a little bit of tolerance at the beginning sometimes because they figure, it's just a fad, they'll be out of it in a week. Well, then when you've been doing it longer, they start to get angry because they realize, they're not changing. But then you do it even longer, then they realize, wow, they really aren't changing. I may need to give them some respect for the fact that this is really who they are now, okay? That's going to take time. And so your job now is to be consistent. This is what I tell everybody who comes into this walk. The best way you can work on all the relationships that are challenging right now is to be persistent and consistent in your new walk, okay? Because that will be the evidence that they need to see. That's letting your light so shine. Okay, now you've said the words. Words are a good start, but they need the substance to they need the evidence. See, this is not something that you say to your child, you need the evidence of things not seen. This is not a faith thing. They want to see it. You're going to actually have to walk it. They need to see it. Okay? That's important. All right, who's next? Okay?
All right, so you were talking about how forgiveness is a release of all negative emotions, but where I'm at right now is that, to my understanding, I forgave, the people, persons, whatever, and I'm just trying to figure out how to kind of know the difference between what I have like internally is just the information to kind of, you know, like we were talking about, like the information. I just kind of wanted some more clarity on how that actually looks like versus kind of like a fear, which I feel like would be a negative emotion. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's say, by the way, I didn't also explain this maybe well enough during the teaching, but releasing the negative, that may take a grieving process. That may take, which takes time. It may take counsel. There's, depending on how, awful the thing was that happened to you. It's one thing for someone just to hurt your feelings. Another thing to maybe have been raped or abused or beat up or verbally abused or whatever. I mean, there was abuses, and abuses can take a lot more time than somebody just stepped over a boundary and, you hurt your feelings or whatever, and that could be healed relatively quickly. You still may be very negatively charging your emotions and need to let that go because you're still in a relationship with that person. You're still going to see them, and that's going to then steer what happens next. But when something maybe more awful happens to you, and it happens over a period of years, and that was no longer happening, but it did happen, after you go through the grieving process, maybe with the counseling to help you process it, the information, though, is useful because there may have been, when you look back at it, saying, okay, I was maybe too young, but if I had been older and I had seen these things happening, I could have maybe avoided some of these things because I would have known what to do, but I was innocent and had no idea. But now that I'm older, I know what to look for, and when I see this happening, I know that's probably a place I shouldn't be. So now you're taking the information and saying, okay, I know certain behaviors, certain tactics and whatever, because there are people that will manipulate and do all kinds of things. You start to know what to look for, so you're not afraid of it, because now you're not the little kid that was abused. You're now an adult, and you can extricate yourself out of things a lot more easily than you could have when you were little, and especially when you didn't know what was going on, right? You thought you should trust people you shouldn't have trusted, but you didn't know that they weren't trustworthy, because you should have been able to trust them. But they abused the trust and those kind of things. Horrible things. But the information gives you little clues to things that will keep you safe as long as you don't let it be something that keeps you in fear. And so when something starts to happen that has a similar something, whatever it was, similar feel to it or similar actions or something similar, the warning signs can go up and say, I probably need to be aware that this has a potential, even though it might not be. I don't want to jump to a wrong conclusion and react to somebody as if they'd already done something they didn't do. But it may be something just to pay more attention to see if there's more hints and more signs that something may be challenging in the future. But if you're afraid, if you have the fear, you'll basically trigger like a PTSD reaction, and you'll be right back as if the thing is really happening, even though it's not. And that wouldn't be fair to the person if they really weren't going there, okay? So, but you do want to benefit from the experience. So now you have a heightened awareness. And so you can know how to be a little safer. Does that make some sense? Now, it's not necessarily so easy to take something that's so emotionally charged and put it in a box that's not locked up, but is available to you in your mind or in your heart, where it's safe and doesn't disturb your peace, but is accessible when needed. That's not so simple. It sounds simple, but it's not so simple. And it takes time. It takes maybe some counseling. It takes effort there. But you have to first make sure that you have finished your grieving process and have released the negative emotions. Because nobody's telling you to forget what happened. Because when things happen in your life, that can still be useful for two ways. One is you can help somebody else who's gone through the same experience help process if you've successfully processed. And the other is use it to avoid potentially being in the same position again. So we don't want to let go of all the information. But what we do want to do is make sure it's no longer in our present causing harm to ourselves and then potentially towards others. Okay, who's next? Okay, Rabbi Tom.
Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Something Richard said a little while ago, that if we hold some of these things in, it could turn to resentment and a whole bunch of other negative things. But what I got to thinking about, and maybe you might elaborate on this, is what about when we have these negative feelings, resentment and bitterness and even sometimes hatred, what about the physiological effects?
Well, I mean, I think I might have talked about this in one of the other parts, but I mean, I can bring that up again. Look, One of the best metaphors that's ever been given to me was given to me when I was in taking a course in massage school, when I was learning about, a part of the anatomy and physiology and everything else they teach you. Part of it also was understanding our immune systems and understanding how things kind of work in our various systems. You had to take a lot of medical related stuff. And when we got to deal with our immune system, the way the teacher explained it, I really thought this metaphor is just fabulous. Is think of your immune system as let's say it starts off as a 1-gallon bucket, just to give you an image. Okay, picture a big 1-gallon bucket. And anything that's happening in your system, the pollutants and the processed foods and all the other stuff that comes into your system, viruses or anything you're exposed to, the immune system can pretty much handle it as long as it doesn't overflow the bucket, okay? And so we can handle quite a lot because we're exposed to things all the time and we don't always get sick, okay? We don't always have physical ailment. But what happens is we have a wonderful thing known as stress, anxiety, negative emotions. And what those things do essentially, and this is a metaphor, it's not literal, it doesn't but it basically it's like shrinking the bucket. So you might have started off with a 1-gallon bucket, now you got one that's like maybe 10 ounces. It's shrunk so much it can't handle almost anything. Because those stuff is always overflowing out of it, and so you're toxic, and you get sick, and you have other ailments. Okay, so that's the physical ramifications of not letting go of the stuff. And I've talked to medical people and other people, and they say that's a great description. Okay, they're learning more and more. You hear this all the time, how stress is related to our being sick. And it's not causing us to be sick. It's not a sickness in itself that way. What it does is it diminishes the immune system's ability to function. And so you will find yourself much healthier if you can release all these things, okay? Because your body will be able to function more efficiently with a fully functioning immune system that's not being shrunk down, so to speak, as a metaphor, by all of the negative emotions. The flip side is you can make the bucket bigger and bigger by putting yourself in places of joy and love and peace. It gives you more ability to handle more stuff, all right? Anyway, thank you for bringing that up. Who's next? Okay, Deirdre?
So three questions actually for you, Rabbi. First one is, sorry, I'm using my phone for writing down the questions. So the first one is, you were talking about you brought the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil into it, and how you need to have, right now as humans we have our relationship with both, and the thought crossed my mind, I feel like Yah was trying to keep the innocence of his kids. Just like, especially with the little one, we try to make sure that they're only putting good things into their head and not something that would, cause them to need forgiveness. I feel like Yahweh was trying to do the same thing when he said, you're not allowed to eat from this tree. This is the only thing you're not allowed to do. I think he was trying to, keep it so that we wouldn't need forgiveness. Is that a correct assumption to make?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That'll be correct.
Okay. And then second, Luke 17:3, I think it was talking about if your brother sins against you, tell them, basically. How do we do that with people who we don't have a relationship with, people we only come into contact with maybe when we work? There are people who, we have the work relationship, but it's not like I'm trying to build a bond with you. So.
No, look, this is all about a relational thing, and so in the context of the relationship, look, if it's somebody you don't see on a regular basis, just release it and don't worry about it. But it has to do with, do you need to resolve something so it's not continually ongoing? If you don't resolve it and let your brother know, your brother's going to continue to trespass. All right? So it's about finding the right opportunity when you are together to say, I need to talk to you about something, but make sure you've already released the negative so that you're not blasting them or coming across angry, but that you're saying, look, I just want to make sure that you may not be aware of it, but you've been stepping over a boundary here that's going to hurt our relationship if we don't kind of resolve this thing. Okay, and it could be a coworker, it could be anybody. But you're going to have to find that moment where you say, maybe you can't do it during work. And say, hey, if you got a few minutes after work or before work, I could talk to you, or on lunch break or something.
Okay.
You know?
And I guess part of that also would be, what part of it is, them, and what part of it is pettiness on, our part of it. If they're doing offends you, I think you have to figure out, what part of it is, pettiness on our part, and what part of it is actually they're wrong.
Well, you could get counsel about that. That's not a problem. But look, here's our rule of thumb. Okay, everybody. If something bothers you, you have two choices. You either let it go, just let it go. And if you do, then you have to really just let it go. Or you have to choose to do something about it. Now, you still have to let go of the emotional part, but I'm saying you either just tolerate it, but if you're going to tolerate it, then tolerate it. Just accept, well, this is what it is. I'm just going to let it be. Okay? So you may think that it's petty and you need to learn. Maybe it's something you realize you need to learn to tolerate because people are just people. And then you're going to but you have to do it without letting it constantly irritate you. You have to be able to let it go. Okay? And just accept that it is what it is, and I've chosen to allow it. Because now you're choosing. It's not their fault anymore. Okay. Or you can choose to speak up. And they don't necessarily have any, mandated response. They can ignore you. They can change. They could get angry. You have no idea necessarily what they're going to respond. But you have to have peace with your choice. Okay? It's like the speak now or forever hold your peace type of thing. Okay? Either you speak or forever you hold your peace. You choose, I'm not going to say anything. But if you're not going to say anything, you can't fume about it underneath the surface because you didn't say anything. You must have peace with your choices. That's the important thing. Okay?
Okay. And then last one, Matthew 9:2. Talking about, you mentioned that Yeshua always healed because of belief. And and also through that healing, their sins were forgiven. So I don't know, how does that apply to the man or the two men, whatever book you're reading, about the man in the Gadarenes, because his mind was clouded either by mental illness or something else. So was there some sort of itty-bitty tiny little thing of belief in there?
Although, again, I said in almost every case, there were other times that he did things just to, like the person that he said, well, who sinned, this person or his parents or whatever? And he said, no, this was just so I could show you something. So it's not always about that. I'm just saying, but in almost every situation, when people came to him seeking healing, and that's not the case in the one you're describing either, but people are coming to him seeking healing, he says, your belief has made you well. So there's a belief element to it, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Because sometimes he would just come across something and just jump in and intervene just because it was part of him demonstrating his authority. Okay? Okay, live stream.
Okay, from Helen Thrasher. Says, if you went to your brother for what you've done, repent of it, and don't get any response back and never talk with you again, how would I know that I'm forgiven? And how do I know that I've forgiven myself or forgave myself?
So the challenge, again, is the same challenge that we talked about at the very beginning of the teaching, which is forgiveness. That first element is completely separate from anything to do with the person that trespassed. So how do you know if you're forgiven? I don't know. Does it still disturb your peace? Are you still angry? Are you still hurt? Are you still upset? Is there any negative emotion still flowing through you when you think of the thing that was going on? When you think of that person, when you think of what happened, that's how you know if you've forgiven. You don't need any feedback from the other person. The only time you need feedback from the other person is if you're going to go to the next step, which is resolution, because you want reconciliation. Then you're going to have to interact with the other person. So when you ask the question, how do I know if I've forgiven? Well, it's very simple. Think about what happened and see how you feel inside. If it stirs that anger or that hurt or that fear or whatever that negative emotion was, you haven't let it go. It still has that place of power in you. When you've truly released it, it will no longer. You'll still remember it, but it won't have that hold over you. We have a few people in the room here that have gone through that and have completely been set free from all of that stuff. It took a while, piece by piece, but it feels good to be free. But you have to go through the process of really and truly letting and releasing things, letting it go. Next question.
From Olivier and Janet Hoffman. Said, Rabbi, could you please elaborate on repentance, please? I thought it involved a change in behavior / heart, but if we keep asking the Father to forgive us for the same offenses, is this true teshuvah?
No, I mean, look, I think I explained this. It's also explained in the teaching on it. You go through the process of remorse expression. Okay, you confess your remorse. Well, you confess that you did it. I did it. It was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry I did it. And you're going to go through this whole process, including, I wish I hadn't done it. I'm going to commit not to do it again. But now, you actually have to fulfill that commitment. So yes, but the thing is, the things that trip you up tend to trip you up regularly. Those are the things that you're going to struggle with the most. And so it's not that you're just blowing hot air out there, and just using words. These are things that really are hard for you. May not be hard for the person next to you, and their thing may not be hard for you, but it's hard for you. Everybody struggles with what they struggle with. So repentance is not fully or even strongly evidenced just by your behavior. It's by the effort in the behavior. He knows you struggle, but you have to struggle. You must make the effort, and he's going to know in your heart if you're struggling or not. I mean, just because you're still not listening doesn't mean that you're not internally struggling. And he's going to watch the internal struggle to see that you actually are struggling. And he'll know that you have a few victories here and there while you still fall short every now and then. Because almost always in these things, if we really are repentful, we will have a few victories where the moment came up where we could have done something and we didn't. But then the next time, we gave in and we did it. Okay, and then the next time, maybe 2-3 times in a row, we don't do it, and then we fail 2 or 3. It's going to be a process. And so you may need counsel to figure out why you keep failing. Why do I keep tripping over this thing? The answer is because you still like it. Well, I don't like it, I hate it. No, that you hate it too. It's a love-hate relationship. Okay? Ultimately, you do it because you want to, or you wouldn't do it. I mean, human beings are very simple. We tend to do only what we want, unless forced otherwise. That's what we do. We do what we want. And if we don't want to, we don't do it. Unless we're forced. And you can force yourself, or somebody outside can force you. But generally speaking, it starts with a little child. A little child only wants to do what he wants to do. Try taking something away from that child it wants to do. Or try stopping the child from getting to something it wants. That's kind of our base human nature, is to do only what we want and not do what we don't want. And so if you really struggle with something, it's because there's somewhere in you that wants to, whatever that is. If it's an anger thing, you want to explode. You like the way it feels when you get that out and you explode. If it's, I'm just fill in the blank, whatever it is, there's something about it, even if it's, and I call it like, it's a sort of a sick way of looking at it, because we are sick. We're not healthy in our emotions. And in that sickness that we have, we like things we should not like. There's some part of us that likes it. Look, even those people who have a problem with drug or alcohol, it's not that they like drugs or alcohol. They like being numbed from whatever they're trying to avoid, so they like that. There's something you like. But on the other hand, you realize it's no good for you, so you hate it. And you call me and you tell me, Rabbi, I keep doing this stuff that I hate. I said, fine, then stop liking it. That's what I'm going to say the next time. And you're going to say, what do you mean? I hate it. I said, no, but you love it too. There's something in you that's attracted to it, or you wouldn't do it. I promise you, if we were to talk and discuss, I can find things that you don't like that you never do. And you never do it because you don't like it. I've had people come up to me and say, this is the best tasting whatever, but it's something I don't like, and they keep trying to get me to eat it. I'm like, but you don't understand. I don't like whatever that is. But you've not tried this one. It's not going to change anything. I know I don't like it. I'm not interested. And I'm still not going to eat it. That's been tried. Okay? And people look at me like, I was like, but that's what we are. We do what we want, and we don't do what we don't want. Okay? Period. And that's why Yahweh tries to get us to want what he has. Because the only way we're going to do the covenant is if we want it. And so he offers you, he doesn't just say, hey, listen to me and things will be okay. He says, look, if you listen to me, and then he lists all the things you could possibly want, your housing, your safety, your bearing children, your crops, your food, it's going to be a trigger. One of those is going to be a trigger for you. You may look at one or two and go, yeah, okay, fine. Oh, wait, I want that one. He's trying to motivate you because you only do what you're motivated to do and you don't do what you're not motivated to do. Okay? Some of you really want to make more money, but you really, really don't like working. That doesn't work. But that's the way we do everything. You want, but you don't want. And if those things are on the same item, you're going to get nowhere. I want, but I don't want. Reverse it. You want something you shouldn't have, but you don't want it. But you want it. But you don't. One of those is going to win from time to time. So sometimes you're going to give in and do it. Sometimes you're not. And so whichever one has the power, you've got to start figuring out how to get the leverage in the right places so that you actually do the right things. Because up here in your head, you know the difference. But that intellectual information isn't enough. You still have a relationship with the thing you don't want to do, and you keep doing it because you still have a relationship with it because somewhere deep down, you get some sort of a pleasure out of it. Even if that pleasure is the avoiding some sort of pain. So maybe you don't love doing the thing itself, but it's taking you away from something you really don't want. And so that's the problem. Why do people, do their papers for school at the last minute? Or projects at the last minute? Because finally the pain of not getting it done is greater than the pain of doing it. So it's just a matter of weighing the two pains. So it's not that you like not doing the paper. You're avoiding the pain of doing the paper. But then at some point, you'd rather have the pain of doing the paper than the pain of showing up and getting an F because you didn't do the paper. That was my whole high school career. I did every paper after midnight the night before it was due. And didn't sleep all the way until I brought it into school and handed it in. Because that's how late I had to get it done. That was stupid. But that's the human nature, right? The lack of joy I would have had sitting there to grind out that paper was more visceral to me, more present to me every day until that last day. Then it got balanced out by a greater pain. See, Yahweh does that to us and if you don't listen, which I want to help you get away from your pain, I'll give you greater pain and greater pain. I'm going to curse you again and curse you again until finally you realize I might need to listen. Because that'll take away all the pain in the right way. Amen? All right, next question.
From Hendry, says, last year I went through an affair. I have forgiven, but from time to time I have thoughts of things that they might have done. Is this steps one or two / not finished or just human nature?
All of the above. Okay, look. You're married. We'll take it from one side of it. Your spouse has an affair. Well, and you decide, I want to keep my spouse. The spouse has repented. The spouse is saying they want to reconcile, and you're willing to do it. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like, okay? Do not torture yourself trying to think about everything they did, okay? Because if that's all you're going to be worried about, then you can't reconcile. Because reconcile means I'm going to take whatever happened and put it aside as if it never happened, and we're going to move forward. We're going to do this next week in the next part where we talk about the verses where Yahweh says, your sins are as far away, once I forgave them, as the heavens from the earth, or as, all the way thrown into the sea where nobody can find them. You're going to have to be able to do that with your spouse if you're going to actually forgive them towards reconciliation. Now, if you're just going to forgive them, just let go of all the negative pain. And if you're just going to forgive them, stop thinking about everything that they did, which will only give you new negative pain. Let go of it all. They did a bunch of stuff, whatever they did. That's why it was an affair. They did stuff. You don't need the details. You don't want the details. You just know they did what they did. Fine. that's either going to wreck the relationship permanently or it's going to need a lot of reconciliation, but none of it's going to be possible either way for you to really move on if you can't forgive and release. And thinking about and dwelling on what was going on is not going to get you there. So if that's still happening, you haven't really forgiven because you still haven't released it so that it's gone, okay? And that's critical, all right? It's not easy. As a matter of fact, it's really hard to do, especially the more painful and emotional it was. But the more painful and emotional it was, the more you need to do it, or it will wreck your present and your future. Go ahead, next question.
Okay, from Connor, says, question, could we be guilty of unforgiveness or holding on to a root of bitterness and justifying it by saying we don't have to reconcile?
No. Okay, remember, again, this is so simple, people. I'm sorry if I'm sounding frustrated, but you're listening, but you're not listening. You need to forgive everything always. You don't need to go any further. You only go further if you want that relationship. And then there needs to be a resolution first where the two agree how to resolve the trespass, which can lead to the potential for reconciliation. So choosing not to reconcile has nothing to do with forgiveness. Choosing to not reconcile has to do with deciding the damage is done. The consequence of the trespass has severed the relationship. You don't have to reconcile, okay? But what'll happen is the person who you have the relationship severed with is going to say, you haven't forgiven me because you haven't reconciled. That's when you have to explain, yes, I have forgiven you. I no longer hold any negative emotions about what happened. However, as a consequence of what happened, I no longer desire this relationship. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I just don't want this relationship anymore. Oh, you haven't forgiven me. Well, you're entitled to your opinion. Because remember, forgiveness is not something anybody else can know if you did it except you. Nobody else can know. They can't really know. They don't know what's going on inside of you. You can act like you've forgiven. You can reconcile and everything, and still they don't know how angry you are still boiling up inside. Only you know if you've let it go. And let me tell you, some people are good at hiding it for years until finally it bubbles over and blows up because they really didn't let it go. Okay? But this is, and again, I don't want to sound frustrated, but it's one of those things where over and over, it's like with the divorce teaching I did. There's some people still, they cannot receive what I said. Everybody must do step one. All other steps are absolutely freely available as options if you want them. Okay? But the other options cannot be done if you haven't done step one. You must first forgive. Then if you want, you can resolve and reconcile and restore. Okay? Resolving, reconciling, restoration is not any evidence that forgiveness has actually happened. People have gone through those processes without forgiving and managed to pull it off, and the forgiveness still wasn't there. Okay? Hopefully that, we're going to say this again next week, probably. I know it's swimming upstream really hard against however many years of your life of hearing, wrong and understanding of this. Go ahead, who's next? Live stream. I'll take like one or two more real quickly here.
Okay, yeah, somebody had commented and says that, we're listening, but, we've never had anyone take up this difficult subject before.
Okay, so let me preemptively do this instead. If you have a question, and maybe that's why we could even just end this here, go back and listen to these three parts until, a good couple of times and see if it doesn't finally sink in. And if you still have questions, you can contact us. But because it's swimming upstream against so many years of a different way of thinking, you're going to have to hear it over and over and over and listen and hit pause and meditate and think about what you just heard and then play some more, then rewind and play certain things again and again because, like you said, you've not heard somebody really address it this way before. Well, then it's fine. then don't expect to understand it, receive it, and be able to start using it, the first time you've heard it. Okay, but be patient enough to go back and listen again and again until then the light bulbs start to go on and say, oh, I get it. Okay, because sometimes you got to hear something over and over to get it. All right, next. Yeah, we have one more or two more real quick.
I have quite a few more, but whenever you say to cut it off. It says, Cynthia Morris, Matthew 9:8, did Elohim give authority to men when he did all by showing men he could speak the word and it would come to pass?
No, this is simply the people, the way they responded seeing what Yeshua did. Okay, they're just responding to him. This was not him giving authority to men or anything else. It was just them recognizing, and they thought of him as a man at the time. They didn't know who he was. They were like, wow, that authority was given to Yeshua. Okay?
Okay, last one. Georgia, what can we do when dealing with someone that we have to see/interact with often, have forgiven, but keep having negative imagery arguments? How do we get rid of negative thoughts?
Just scream at them the next time you see them. I think I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, if you are having a problem with this, then you need to get counsel, because you're going to have to figure out why you will not let go of the negative feelings about what happened. You're not able to say, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they do, or whatever it is. So you may need counsel to process through it. Because if you're still feeling that way when you go and interact with this person, you've got unresolved stuff that needs to be resolved, at least in you. Okay, resolution has to start in you. You have to resolve and be able to be at peace with it happened. It is what it is. Now, you're not going to keep putting yourself back in a position for it to continue to happen. I get that. And so you may have to sever a relationship if a person's, look, boundaries. Trespass happens when someone crosses boundaries. If someone continuously is crossing a boundary, it's because you have not made a clear enough consequence to the trespass. Or you haven't spoken up to tell them they are trespassing. So first thing is, did you communicate that they're trespassing? Yes, I did. Okay, but they keep trespassing anyway. Did you give them any consequence that if you keep trespassing, there is a price to this? I will maybe stop calling, or we won't interact anymore. Whatever it is, I don't know if it's a worker, a friend, whatever this is, there has to be a consequence. Parents are pretty good with this with children to some degree. They're getting worse at it as we get generationally on in time, where children don't get any consequences. And so you should be able to go into a relational place, interact with somebody, have released all the anger, and know that whatever it is, that consequence isn't, the trespass shouldn't be happening on and on and on. If it is, it's because you have not communicated that this is a problem. And you need to communicate, hey, this is a problem. You're trespassing. Okay? And if you have a real problem letting go of this stuff, then you should counsel. Okay, who's next? Actually, that was it. Let's just end it here. Let's go ahead and get the children from upstairs.